Hello, everyone. We are just getting started. I want to thank you all for joining us, and we are in for a really fun conversation today. So I hope you have your pen or paper or however you choose to take notes, and so that you can kind of take what you need from today's session. But I will kick us off and welcome you to American Family Insurance DreamBank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. I'm Madeline, and I'm so excited to have you with us here today. Here at American Family Insurance, we believe communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dreams. That's why we created DreamBank, an inspirational community, destination, and digital experience dedicated to dreamers everywhere. From our daily event series to immersive signature programs, there's something for every dreamer. Our always free offerings are designed to help you celebrate the dream journey, overcome obstacles, and stay motivated. Now, I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker. Called the Queen of Reinvention by Fortune magazine, former entertainment exec turned coach Pamela Mitchell, aka Coach Pamela, is the nation's premier expert in reinvention. She is the author of The 10 Laws of Career Reinvention, Essential Survival Skills of Any Economy, a Harvard Business Review top shelf recommended pick. Her latest book is Mastering the Skill of Reinvention, an Audible original top 10 bestseller. Coach Pamela has appeared on CBS, CNN, NPR, MSNBC, and the Today Show. She has been profiled and quoted in top publications including the New York Times, Business Week, Times, Men's Health, and Real Simple. That is quite a list. Absolutely love that. And so today is just going to be a little bit of a conversation about reinvention. And so we were chatting before we kicked off too. And we were like, we need to save this. So to kind of just kick us off and ground us, can you tell us a little bit about reinvention and what it means to you and maybe some misconceptions? Because when I think of it, I think of that movie moment of that makeover where it is almost instantaneous and all you have to do is make a few tweaks and then your whole life can be different, whether Devil Wears Prada, Miss Congeniality, or my favorite, Princess Diaries. So if you can give us a little bit of grounding before we kind of dive into some other questions, I would absolutely love that.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me today. It is just my great pleasure and great honor to be here today and talk to you and everyone about reinvention. Obviously, my passion and my calling. So the thing about reinvention is, yeah, there is this kind of big myth in the world that reinvention always means a radical change and that it is like a big change in a very short period of time. And I also like they say it in the movies, it's usually that physical transformation, but you'll read about it also in magazines where somebody who was working in banking ran off and started a goat cheese farm or something along those lines. Like the stories are really great stories. They make great copy, but I'm here to tell you that that is like 1% of reinvention. So if you are sitting there thinking like, "Oh my God, I don't want to make that kind of radical shift in my life," I am here to tell you, you don't have to, that you can pursue a reinvention without having to go through a massive transformation. So reinvention really is basically taking your skills and your talents and applying them in a new way. And I have a philosophy that you don't want to use a power saw when pinking shears will do. So sometimes, yeah, your life needs that type of radical shift, but other times it's just little small tweaks. You might just shift into a different division within your company, or you might start a side hustle that taps into a different part of you that you don't get to express in your day gig. I mean, these all kind of qualify as reinvention. It's really a skill and a tool that allows you to shape your life into something that feels good inside to you.
That is wonderful. And just kind of opening this up for everyone else, I have kind of a list of questions that we created to have this conversation. But if anything pops up for you while we're talking through, feel free to put it in the chat and we will definitely have time to get to those later. And so this is really a conversation for all of us. But I just wanted to kind of kick us off with our next question. You talk about reinvention being both a skill and a journey. For those of us feeling restless in our current roles, how can we tell if it's time for reinvention versus just needing a refresh in our current path?
Mm, excellent, excellent question. So it is a skill and it is a journey. So let's talk first about the skill of reinvention. And that skill is the tools that you use to navigate change. And reinvention happens on two levels. It happens both on the tactical level. That's what people think about, like, oh, I've got to redo my resume. I've got to go out and talk to people. But there's also an internal level. And I'd say that that's actually the most important level. We have to grow into being the kind of person who can have the life we say we want. So we need to understand that there is this journey of growth that has to match what we want to accomplish out in the world. And that is where the journey starts to come in. So we've got to, as I always say, if we were that person that could have that life, we'd already be living that life. So we've got to go on a journey of growth in addition to that tactical execution. Both of them take time. So, the world only, the world doesn't accommodate itself to what we necessarily want in our own timeline. So there's a journey that happens from that perspective. And then again, there's that internal journey of growth. And one thing that you did ask me, Madeline, before that I actually want to loop back to are what are some of the common pitfalls? Because
Mm.
we are talking about journey. And one of the common pitfalls that I see when people come to us is that they have a deadline for their reinvention. They're like, in 6 months, I want this to be happening, especially because they're type A, they're successful. And so they just think if I apply enough attention and energy, then it's going to happen in that particular, by that deadline. And what I say is it takes the time that it takes. That's law 9 in my book, The 10 Laws. Law 9, it takes the time that it takes. So you don't want to fall into that trap of setting a deadline because that adds undue pressure on your reinvention. So instead of having a deadline, what you want to have is a timeline. You want to be able to check in and have check in moments, but create space to go on that journey of growth and for life to help you. Like it might take someone 3 weeks to get back to you. You don't control that. Or, things are happening in the world that kind of throws everything up in the air. You don't control that either. We're talking about the pandemic. Like if you were planning on reinventing yourself right at the beginning of the pandemic, well, heck, that threw a big wrench in the timeline. So, these are the things that can really kind of trip people up when they're coming into this journey, is kind of putting that pressure on themselves to accomplish it by a particular deadline.
That is really wonderful. And a question came in too. What about if you have been trying for so long, but nothing is changing, especially when you're between jobs and had similar difficult experience over and over?
Hmm. Okay, I love that. That is a really excellent question. So, if you're having a similar experience over and over, that tells me that there's some type of layer of investigation that needs to happen. Why does it keep happening over and over again? What's happening either in what you're pursuing or in a belief system that might be going on that is attracting certain things into you? So, you have to give yourself time to investigate that. And if you're between jobs, I'm assuming that there's probably some kind of pressure. Maybe there's not, but most people have some type of pressure when they're like, "Oh my God, I'm between things that I don't know what to do." Even if there's no financial pressure, there's still like the emotional pressure of not knowing. So what I always say in that situation is two things. One is to extend your timeline for figuring it out. Like you don't have to figure it out right now. You have to go on a journey of figuring it out. But while you're doing that, just take a job. Just start doing things, because what that does is it starts to put you in motion and it releases some of the pressure on figuring it out in this moment. So you can just take something, start working, and then go on that journey of investigation that can then put you on a path to an intentional outcome.
Thank you. And I feel like there's a question too that
Mhm.
perfectly kind of aligns with this. And many of us are at different stages of life and are balancing multiple responsibilities while dreaming of something new or even something slightly different. How can we honor both our current commitments and our desired changes?
Ooh, that is a good one, because I always say to our clients that you want to look at your life in phases of 5 to 7 years. And when you look at your life in 5 to 7 year phases, what that does is a couple of things. Number one, it relieves the pressure for having to figure everything out for your life right now. You're only figuring it out for the next 5 to 7 years. And that just means like, okay, now I just need to know what the next step is. I don't have to figure out my life. Now, when you look at this next 5 years, you can actually look at the reality of what's happening for you in these next 5 years. So, if you're a parent with young children, that's that phase of life. And so, your reinvention, it has to accommodate where you are in your life stages. So, it's not realistic. And I'm all about realistic reinvention. I am not one of those people that's like, oh, yes, blah, blah, blah. Nope. So, if you're in a stage of life that has a lot of demands on you, whether you have young children or you're part of the sandwich generation where you're taking care of young children and aging parents, you won't have a lot of time for that 5 to 7 years. Your family is making has a lot of demands on you. So what you need to do in that case is not just stop all reinvention activity, you just have to scale it for the phase of life that you're in. So you're doing smaller things along the way that's teeing up that next phase. So when you get to that point, then you've got some groundwork that you can begin working on, whether it's an exploration of your interests or just starting little projects. All of that helps you there. And the other thing that I want to point out, because sometimes it can feel really overwhelming when we're in that stage, is number one, like if you have young children, in 5 to 7 years, they'll be at a different stage as well, so their needs will change. I've gone through taking care of aging parents, and unfortunately, that also does come to an end. It's sad, but it does. And so, things do end. And so the other thing is that you want to let your future self make that decision. So you make the decisions for today, but you will be different in 5 to 7 years. Your life will look different, and you want to let your future self make the decisions for that moment based upon the circumstances that you're living in that at that time.
Kind of along the lines of scalability and also too, our lives aren't in a vacuum.
Mhm.
One of the questions that's coming up for me is oftentimes when I do think of reinvention or from talking to our community, it does feel pretty large. And sometimes we have partners or we have careers or things like that. So, how do we communicate to the other stakeholders in our lives, whatever they may be, when it is a big pitch or switch? So, whether it's like, I want to leave my corporate job and start a side hustle, or we are starting a family, or whatever it is, when we are kind of in that moment, how do we communicate it, especially if our role is going to change? If I am a mom and I want to start a side business, but I need Saturday mornings now to do that,
Mhm.
how do we communicate to the stakeholders and the other players in our life?
Yeah. Excellent question. So the first thing that I will say is that a lot of times it doesn't go well to go to your partner and begin talking about reinvention. And here's why: because people are naturally resistant to change. And so when you introduce change, it's very destabilizing for your partner because they don't know. Even if they're really a supportive partner, it's still like there's an unknown factor. So my advice for anybody who is thinking about reinvention is not to talk about the reinvention to their stakeholders until they've worked it out and they have clarity on what's happening. Because with clarity, you can then go to the stakeholders in your life and say, here is what I'm planning, and here is the impact. But you're working it out in a safe space first and dreaming about it there, like that, like we have groups and things like that. Like that's where you do all that brainstorming, or you do it with your friend that has gone on a reinvention themselves so that they know. You do all that working out with them so that you have that safe space to allow it to flourish. And then you bring it into your partnership or your other stakeholders. And then all of their fears, which will get triggered, you'll have worked through that already in a safe space, so you'll know how to respond to that. It's really not fair to expect the stakeholders in your life to deal with all of the ambiguity and the confusion and the working it out that you'll go through when you're trying to figure it out yourself.
That makes total sense. And so pivoting to a little more of a controlled reinvention for specifically career.
Mhm.
If what are your tips for reinvention if you've been out of the workplace for a little bit of time and then want to re-enter, how to potentially talk about that, or if you would like to make an internal career pivot, whether you're staying at the same company but maybe want to switch teams or want to be seen like you are ready to level up. Um,
Mhm.
so how do you communicate that?
Okay. So, one of the things that you really have to think about, and this again is one of the most common mistakes that reinventors make, is that they decide to pursue something based on their own interests. So even if you've been out for a while or you want to do something within your company, you're like, I'm interested in this. So therefore, this is what I'm going to pursue. And that's incomplete. You are interested in something, but what you have to remember is that reinvention is predicated on you delivering a result for someone else. In order for you to get a new job, you've got to prove to someone else that you're going to be able to deliver the result that they want in that particular role. And so, therefore, because you're not coming in with the traditional background, you've got to be more strategic about how you can demonstrate to that person that, yeah, I am going to be able to deliver the result of that role. So, what you're going to be doing really is targeting, creating the target, and then creating your background mix, your legitimacy points, whether if you're re-entering, maybe you're doing projects, pro bono projects that show that you can deliver a result in that new space, or internal, if you're making an internal shift, again, you can work on projects, both volunteer as well as internally, to demonstrate the skill set to have success in that new role. So that's really the big piece that you have to understand is what kind of legitimacy points do I need to demonstrate to that hiring manager that I can deliver success in that role, and then start assembling it.
Wonderful. And kind of just like thinking of obstacles, fear is often one of our biggest obstacles in our dream pursuit and often holds us back from making changes. What what's your favorite strategy for helping people push through what they call false fears without ignoring the limiting, oh my gosh, legitimate concerns that deserve our attention?
Okay. There are two kinds of fears that we think about. One of them is false fears, and then the other are functional fears. So, functional fears keep us safe. We biologically are built to feel fear, and that's what allows the survival of the species, right? So, if there's a saber-toothed tiger, you're going to be like, I'm afraid, and I'm going to run, and you live another day. False fears have the same biological response, but we're really not in danger. So, an example of a functional versus false fear is a functional fear might be I woke up this morning, I've got an interview, and there's an accident on the highway, and I'm afraid I'm going to be late because of traffic. That's a functional fear, like it's real today. A false fear might be I'm worried that I might be late next week for my interview. Like there's no danger today. So my favorite technique, well, there are a couple techniques that I like. One of them is I call it a walk down memory lane. So remind yourself of the moments that you weren't late, right? So like remind yourself specifically of your moments of success that prove to you that you are able to face hard things and still come through them with flying colors. So reminding yourself that you have a track record of figuring things out and being successful is really crucial because there's this thing called the forgetting curve. Herman Ebbinghaus, I think, is the one that did that and showed that we forget our accomplishments. I mean, that forgetting curve is really, really short. So you've got to remind yourself that you did that, and that helps release fear. The other thing, too, that you can do is talk to someone and have them talk you through it so that you can come up with strategies that map things out, and that can also lower that fear. And just one more point about fear, it's not about not feeling fear. Okay, because as I said, it's a biological response. It's about lowering it to a level that you can still take action. So you can feel all the fear you want. You just don't want it to stop you from taking action. That's all. And sometimes that's just enough to know, you know what? I don't have to get rid of this fear. I just need to keep moving.
I definitely fall victim of false fear. Especially about the traffic one. I can be worried about that all like next week. Yes. We had a question that came through that I absolutely love. So, can you share some ideas of how can you design your day for intentional journey of reinvention?
Ooh, okay, love that. Because one of the things that I recommend to people, so this is an exercise that I have people do when they first come in for reinvention. It's called your ideal day exercise. And what you do is you begin to map out your ideal day. And I mean, you get granular. You are lying in bed, you open up your eyes, you look around. Where are you? Because sometimes you're not where you are in the moment. You know, what do you see around you? Who's next to you? You know, what is, you go to the window and look out, what do you see there? You walk out, like, what are you doing next? Are you going to the kitchen to start your day in a slow way? Are you working out? So like you are getting super granular about what does this ideal day look like? Then you begin to talk about work. And it's not about what are you doing, it's how are you working? Are you going to a home office? Are you going to an office downtown and meeting colleagues? Like, what are you doing? Okay, so you're like starting all of those things and you're mapping out this ideal day. And then once you've mapped it out from the beginning to the end, you start to look at what element can you introduce today? Like, what is the beginning of living that ideal day that you can pull into present moment? So even if it's like I start my morning by going outside and having a cup of coffee, like start it now. How can you make that happen now? Like put it in and begin feeling the feelings of living that new life.
I actually love that. And I did an ideal day once, and I always came to that I was always on vacation on my ideal day. And so then I got really clear that I'm looking for that moment of peace. And so
Hmm.
I now actually always have a fabulous cup of coffee every morning. Like it is filled with sugar and I absolutely love it. And
Nice.
then I have a really nice bathrobe for the
Ah,
moment of peace. So when I end my day, it always ends cozy because there's just something about getting in to something cozy, whether it's a hotel or like that fresh made bed. That
mhm.
was the overarching theme for my ideal day of like that peace and tranquility. And I was like, okay, I can get this at home. So
Nice.
that was one of my
Nice.
learnings.
Love
But
that.
one of the questions that came in is how important is the practice of resilience when reinventing yourself?
Ooh, ooh, interesting question. So, the practice of resilience is really, really important because what resilience means is the ability to keep moving in the face of obstacles. That's what the muscle of resilience gives you. So, I always think that if you decide that even that things that feel personal aren't personal, like you can be resilient to go and try another day. So sometimes life will dump on you. But if you can get up and keep going, then you can keep making progress towards your reinvention. I've been helping people do this since 2003. I've seen thousands of people go through reinventions. I have yet to see somebody that did not have roadblocks, obstacles, dark nights of the soul. Like it's part of the journey. So resilience is a key muscle to develop so that you can keep going.
Perfect. We just had another question come through. Um, so due to time, I actually am going to, the questions that are coming in are fabulous, but while sift through the chat,
Okay.
kind of one last, if we only have time for one more, for someone who leaves today inspired but unsure where to start, what would be your recommendation for one small, meaningful action they could take this week to begin their reinvention journey?
Okay. So I like this. It's going to sound like I know people are going to expect me to say, okay, figure out what you want to do, but that is not what I'm going to say. Because again, back to these resilience practices, back to the skill of reinvention, you have to set up like the internal structure so that you will keep going. So one of the things that I give as a tool to all of our clients is what's called a daily success list. And this is based on what I talked to you before about the science behind the forgetting curve. And so we will forget our accomplishments for the day. We end the day usually thinking about all the things we haven't done. So we end every day with a deficit and we begin the next morning with a deficit. And it is really tough to create from a deficit. So, what I would give everybody to do is to start doing a daily success list. So, every day, at the end of the day, you're going to write down 4 successes. Not 2, not 3, but 4. And the reason 4 is because it pushes you beyond your comfort zone. It forces you to think like, what were 4 good things that happened today? What 4 successes did I have? These successes can be big or small, career related or not. It is the habit of noticing those successes that is really critical for this. Once you build that habit, you are training your mind to notice your progress. And noticing your progress gives you that feeling of momentum that is essential for building and getting to a result. Anytime someone comes into me and they're like, nothing's happening, blah, 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 I'm like, are you doing your daily success list? And it is inevitable that they are not because big change doesn't happen often in like the big moments of transformation. It's usually all these little small things like today I had a new haircut. Tomorrow I had a new lipstick. Today I went to a stylist. And all of a sudden there's a whole new look, right? It's not a big moment. So you got to notice all these little things along the way. So start doing that now and you'll start to feel better in your life because you'll start to say, I am making progress towards my dreams.
I absolutely love that. And one thing that we talk about at DreamBank all the time is really pausing and celebrating success, not just at the end of your dream pursuit, but whether you've overcome an obstacle or even identified that maybe you need to take a step back or step sideways.
Mhm.
Those often typically are the hardest steps in your
Mhm.
dream pursuit, which as we're talking about reinvention. And so I really just hope everyone does take time to pause wherever you're at on your journey and really just like take in the view and kind of look and see how far you've come, and kind of pat yourself on the back. And then also kind of a reminder too. I know I do this a lot is I tend to just think if I can just white knuckle through it, but not everything in life is meant to be white knuckled, and to find opportunities of joy and stillness. And I think having that list will definitely be part of that for me now. I
Yeah.
haven't been doing that. I am a big fan of telling my partner at the end of the day all the things I haven't done, or like the ones that didn't go quite right is my
Oh,
actual favorite to just ruminate on, that I'm sure no one else was even paying attention to. So I really appreciate this. Um, Everyone, the comments in the chat, I know they were coming through in the chat and privately, and so I hope we got through some of them. But I really just appreciate everyone tuning in and learning alongside of you all.
can
Um,
I say one other thing about
oh,
that?
absolutely.
Okay, if people don't mind if I take 5 extra minutes, just
Absolutely.
say something about another thing that you were just talking about white knuckling it, because it is really tough to get to a result without rewarding yourself along the way. So there are two things that allow us to get to a result. There is accountability and there is rewards. And they are two sides of the same coin. And so sometimes what we do is we over index on the accountability piece, right? And that's what leads to the white knuckling, because every day it's like, did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. Right. And now we're like, shh. So it's really critical. Or sometimes we over index on the rewards, like, oh, today I got up, so I'm going to treat myself, right? So you need a mix of both. And it's really important when you have a big goal to celebrate the small ones along the way so that you're feeding your soul, right? You have to feed your soul along the way so that you feel inspired to keep moving forward. So no white knuckling. Create both an accountability plan, external accountability, because what happens when we try to hold ourselves accountable is that it drains the energy that we need in order to execute the goal. So you've actually less available energy to execute when you're trying to hold yourself accountable. So you want an external accountability structure, whether it's a friend, preferably not a partner, because you want to take that dynamic out, and just keep your partnership as like a place of rejuvenation and support. So a friend, a colleague, a coach, whatever. External accountability, and then create your reward plan. So when you hit interim milestones, whether it be like a big task or something for a week or a big goal, that you know what those rewards are and that you have something to look forward to.
I absolutely love that. And so much better. Like, yes. Yes, I wish I was taking notes. This was absolutely wonderful. And I hope all of you who tuned in got as much out of this conversation as I did. And I love learning alongside of you all. And so until next time, friends.
Oh, wait, did somebody
Oh,
just say where to look for inspiration?
yes, someone did just ask that.
Oh gosh. Okay. Audibles. So the Audible originals, the Pivot and Pursue It is 90 minutes. So it is a 90-minute masterclass, or mastering the skill of reinvention. That's book length, so 6.5 hours. Start there because I map it all out for you there. And you can just listen to it at your convenience and get that inspiration and then just keep moving from there.
I love it. All right. Well, we are
Okay.
just a few minutes over, but thank you so much, everyone. This was absolutely wonderful. Um, until next
Thank
time.
you. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye.